Hello everyone, welcome back to Connect to Care. I'm Tiffany Lloyd with The Gracious Mind, and I'm here to bring you tips and tricks about the interpreting field and beyond. We are excited to continue celebrating Pride with you for this summer of Pride, and we are going to spotlight a really amazing deaf person today who is a part of the queer community and is a great resource for individuals who want to learn more about queerness and deafness and that experience. Today we are spotlighting Blake at Legend of Blake on Instagram. They are a deaf, non-binary, transgender human being, and they educate individuals on queerness, deafness, and what it's like to be a trans person in the deaf community. Today we are going to dive into a topic that I'm really passionate about, and it's about interpreting situations that are offensive or abusive. So when we talk about interpreting abuse or interpreting situations that are offensive, we have to keep in mind that deaf people do have a right to their opinion, even if their opinion is maybe something that is antithetical to what you believe or what you feel is right or where your morals align. It's important to have clear boundaries about what you will accept as an interpreter and as a human being. So often in interpreting situations, we'll have downtime with consumers where we might be able to chat about a situation or chat about what's going on. That's just the nature of our interpreting assignments. It's not always what happens, but it's pretty common, especially if you work in the field of VRS and you have long hold times. Sometimes you're talking with someone and they may bring up something that is really offensive to you, or they may make a comment that might make you feel really uncomfortable. And I'm going to provide you with some tips or tricks or things that have worked for me in interpreting and how I approach those types of situations. The first thing to note is that if something is going on that is abusive and it's directed at you, that you as the interpreter do not have to take that abuse. You have the right to exit the situation and take care of yourself. Your mental health is the most important priority in that situation. Sometimes we're interpreting situations and the deaf person may be talking about something and it may be abuse directed at someone else. The abuse may be in the actual interpretation, and in those situations, you have to just push through and you have to just interpret the situation as to what's going on because the abuse isn't necessarily directed at you. For those situations, I really encourage you to have a really clear self-care path after you get done with the assignment. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So when you're in an interpreting situation and the abuse starts to become directed at you, it's important to know your rights and know what you can do. And I'm going to give you some phrases and some things that have worked for me in the past. Let's say that you're interpreting for someone and they make a sexist comment. So I've had someone say to me before, or in conversation, oh, women should be in the kitchen. That's where they're supposed to be, right? It's really offensive. And it might be true that you might like to cook and you're a woman, but it's not necessarily a great stereotype to perpetuate, right? So in these types of situations, when it's directed at me, if the deaf person says something along the lines of, you should be in the kitchen, you shouldn't be here right now, I typically just cut that off right away. That's not a conversation I'm willing to have with you, or hey, let's keep this to the message at hand, or you know I'm the interpreter, right? I'm not here to have this conversation with you. It's okay for you to show those clear boundaries with your consumer. I understand that you might feel uncomfortable or it feels uneasy because we're always focused on customer service and how deaf people are an oppressed minority as a community and we want to constantly advocate for them. But if you're in a situation where someone is abusing you, you have the right to stop it right there. This also applies to when you recognize someone abusing someone else, like maybe one of your colleagues. If someone's abusing your colleague and you're witnessing it, you can intercede in that situation and stand up for your colleague, especially if it's a situation where they may not be comfortable standing up for themselves. I want to caution you that, again, your experience may not be everyone else's experience, so something you recognize as abuse may not be abusive to someone else, and so it's all about just educating others on what your boundaries are. So to wrap up, deaf people have the right to have their opinions. Those opinions might be offensive, and it might be something that we have to push through in the moment while interpreting. If that opinion is directed at you, you have the right to walk away. And in those situations, when you are being abused, it's important to report that abuse to the entity under which you are working. If you're working for a school district, it's important to go to your coordinator and let them know right away about what's happening and that you were abused in the situation. If you're working for an agency, it's important to go to the agency, the person who owns the agency. And if you're working for VRS, follow your VRS work practices and reporting that situation. When I report abuse, I like to stick to the facts and everything that was concrete. And so I like to use language like, this person said this in this situation, and I don't often add how I felt about it, but sometimes I do if it was important, like the person berated me until I started crying, or I couldn't exit the situation because of whatever was happening. Sometimes I will add that information in, but I really like to stick to what was said and what the outcome was and what my reaction was to that situation. And then, like I said, it's important to have a self-care plan. It's important to have that down before you even start interpreting. And so if you're newer to this field, or if you've been in this field for many years, I want you to take time this week to write down what your self-care plan is if you're in a situation that is maybe tumultuous or abusive or hostile, and make sure that you know exactly what your process is once that situation has resolved itself to take care of yourself. Ultimately, your mental health is the most important thing. It is the priority. If you are not in a good mental health space, it's going to be much more difficult for you to continue to do this job because it is such a difficult job. I like to write down things that are monetary self-care and things that are non-monetary self-care. I like to write down things that I can express myself with, maybe artistically, as well as things that I can just lay back and do. And so I'll make a list that includes all of the above, and then when a situation comes up and I'm not in a really great headspace to deal with what's going on because of whatever the abuse was, I can look back to this paper and go, okay, this is what I need to do for myself to take care of myself. Sometimes that looks like a bath, sometimes that looks like a large glass of wine, sometimes it looks like calling your best friend and just crying, keeping in mind that we want to make sure that all information is confidential, but you do have a right to your own experience, and you have a right to tell someone when you felt hurt or abused by someone. I encourage you to reach out to a therapist or a professional when you're feeling very triggered by an interpreting situation. Here at The Gracious Mind, we have practitioners and psychologists and therapists that are here to support you and help uplift your mental health. And you can check out in the description box below our website where you can get in contact with someone if you're in need. Last, we want to know what works for you. What's on your self-care list? Drop a comment below what you do to self-care when you're in a situation that you're interpreting that is maybe abusive or offensive or something that really hurts you. Tell us what you do to take care of yourself, because we want to know, and maybe something that works for you could work for someone else. Click subscribe below and check us out next week for another Connect to Care video.